Alright, testing, testing. This is. It's what the title is, random reaction. I didn't even set up the stream yet. It's so random. I just saw this on YouTube and decided to go live because it's an interesting thing and it's kind of presumptuous, actually. Hold on, you'll see. Okay, hold on. I went live very unprepared for this. It's okay though. Can listen to my sexy voice while I prepare this for you. Okay. Let's see the title. Hold on. Okay, the title of this presentation is Atheists Cannot Explain the Secret Code Seen in Creation. So that's the title, and I might skip around a little. I mean, it's an hour long. I'm not sure I want to go through the whole thing. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'll start it from the beginning, but I may skip around here and there, depending on how I feel. Oh, I think this is a video by Answers in Genesis. I don't know. Here it is. Let's see what this guy has to say. Oh, wait. Damn it. I have to restart it. Okay, I didn't. See how dumb I am sometimes? It's fine. I got it. Here we go. There we go. I got it. Take two. Okay, how did that not work? Hold on. Wait. Okay, let's try this again.
I had a tremendous interest in science, And having been reared in a Christian home, I'm very grateful for that. I loved the Lord and I wanted to serve Him. And so it was only a matter of time that I would end up reading a book that had evolution in it. And I could remember it was a dinosaur book. I was very young, loved dinosaurs, what little boy doesn't? And I'm reading this book on dinosaurs, and it talked about how one kind evolved into another. And I remember thinking, well, that's not right, because I'd read Genesis and I knew that the Lord created certain kinds of.
No, it never said kind. I'm sorry, but I don't think textbooks ever said kind. Citation needed. Sorry, dude. I don't buy it.
Organisms. And I remember asking my dad about that. I remember, first of all, being kind of angry at the book. You know, what's going on, or confused. And then I asked my dad about it, and he said, well, he gave me very good advice. He said,
angry at the book. That's that tells you a lot about this person.
Well, we don't believe that. He said, we believe what the Bible teaches. It's just that simple. And I remember being very angry at the book for having lied to me, because I loved science, and it was depressing for me and irritating to pick up a book that is supposed to excite me and teach about God's creation, and instead it was telling me a story, a fictional story, as if it were true.
It's not a fictional story, dude. Sorry. I'm gonna keep stopping. I don't care. It's
made me very angry, and then I wanted to throw the book away. And I asked my dad again, you know, should I just toss it? And then he gave me another piece of advice that I've treasured to this day. He says, no, because it's got some good stuff in it too. You see, what he was doing is he was teaching me discernment. He was teaching me that not everything you read is necessarily factual. You have to think through these issues. And as Christians, we need to filter what we observe in the world. We need to filter it through God's Word.
That's self-indoctrination, isn't it? I mean, not taking science's word for it, but filtering it through a Christian ideology.
That's something that I still apply today, because I find that God's Word is always true. Let God be true, though every man a liar, the Bible says. And now I go around teaching people this and showing them how science confirms biblical creation, how it lines up with it when you understand the facts. And I see the light bulb go on. And this is why creation science is important to me. It's not just because I have an interest in science.
The Bible says that we believe. That we believe in God, but the Bible can't really be proven to be true. A true, accurate account of events. It can't. It just can't prove it.
Which I do. But it's because I want people to be saved. I want them to recognize that God's Word is true from the beginning, and therefore I need to remove this myth, this stumbling block, that evolution is somehow supported by science. It isn't. Good science confirms biblical creation.
No, it doesn't.
It's my pleasure again to come to you and see how science does confirm biblical creation. One of the privileges I have as a scientist, I get to see
Dr. Jason Leslie? Does he ever pronounce his name for us? Because all I have to go on is Leslie.
Aspects of God's creation that a lot of people don't get to experience, and it's just my joy.
What kind of doctor is this guy anyway?
To share that with others, and so that they can see God's majesty revealed in what He's created. There was a movie a few years ago, National Treasure, where Nicolas Cage finds a secret code on the back of the Declaration of Independence, and it leads him to other clues and so on. And obviously the code was put there by very intelligent people, and you know that implies intelligence when you find a code like that. What if there were a code embedded in numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4? What if there was a secret code embedded in them that we finally got around to discovering? What would that imply? What if there was a message inside numbers? What would that?
That would imply that a human being discerned that those numbers are a code. Not that that code was put there by an intelligent being.
That imply it would tell us something about the intelligence of the person who made numbers.
The person who made numbers. Wow.
Now, we don't often think about God creating numbers because they're abstract. We think about God creating animals and stars and planets and so on. But numbers, God is responsible for them as well. Even though they're abstract and conceptual, God's sovereign over the abstract just as much as he is the physical universe. And as a matter of fact, there is a secret code built into numbers that was discovered in the 1980s. It's been there since creation.
Well, the Bible code. Is he talking about the Bible code?
But it wasn't until the 1980s we got smart enough to finally decipher it.
Ugh.
And it is mind-blowing. And this is something that I read about when I was pretty young, really, and it was mind-blowing to me. And I want to share this with you because I dare say there is no secular or atheistic explanation for what I'm going to share with you.
Okay, well, I'm an atheist. Let's see if I can explain it.
Today, this secret code only makes sense in the Christian worldview. And so we're going to have to talk a little bit about that, what that means. When I was young, very young, and my mother would prepare these wonderful meals, but sometimes she would put broccoli on the plate, which I didn't really care for. And in rare moments of maturity, I would eat the broccoli first, get it out of the way, because the rule was you had to eat everything on your plate. So I'd get the broccoli out of the way first so that I could then enjoy the rest of the meal. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So in that spirit, we got some broccoli to do first. But stay with me because it's going to get really good. Okay? You won't be able to enjoy the rest of the meal unless you go through the broccoli. So we're going to talk first about sets. Now, a set in mathematics is just what you think it is. It's a group of, in this case, numbers that have a common defined property. And so you can have different types of sets out there. And in most sets, some numbers are included in the set and other numbers are excluded from the set. This is pretty.
I just saw this and I had to react to it. I'm sorry. It's the Da Vinci Code is more real. It's Leonardo da Vinci is wow. That's opening up a whole nother can of worms. It's there are things that people, I don't want to get into it right now. I'm just reacting to this video. I think he's talking about the Bible code. I'm not sure what he's talking about. So let's find out.
Easy. It depends on how you define the set. So you could have the set of even numbers, those numbers that are evenly divisible by 2. And in that set, those numbers would be included in it, and those other numbers would be excluded from it. That's pretty easy. That's the set of even numbers. We could consider the set of negative numbers. Now that's a different set, isn't it? And so a different set of numbers will be included in there, and then those other ones will be excluded. Now for those two sets, you can tell just by looking at the number whether or not it belongs, right? In this case, if it doesn't have a little negative sign in front of it, it doesn't belong. And if it does belong. So that's pretty easy. You can tell just by looking at the number. But there are some sets that have a more complicated definition, and you can't tell just by looking at the number whether or not it belongs. And so we're going to talk about a particular set that's called the Mandelbrot set. This was discovered in the late 1970s, early 1980s, named after the person who really discovered this, Benoit Mandelbrot. He was a math guy and a computer guy. He worked at IBM. This set is defined according to this little formula that you see right here, where it's the set of all numbers, C. C is a number that is potentially part of the Mandelbrot set. We're testing it, for which this other number, Z, remains small according to this little formula. And it looks very complicated, but it's really not. I'll take you through it. The little n just means that that's a particular value of Z. N plus 1 is the next value of Z. So there's lots of values of Z. There's a sequence. And if that sequence of Z stays small, like if it's all zeros, that would be small, then the other number, C, is part of the Mandelbrot set. On the other hand, if the sequence of Z gets very big, if it goes 1, 2, 100, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000, then C is not part of the Mandelbrot set. And we'll do a couple of examples to let this sink in. It's pretty straightforward, really. So we're going to ask, is the number 1 part of the Mandelbrot set? So C equals 1, okay? And we're going to plug that into our formula then. So we have Z squared plus 1, because that's the number we're testing. That becomes the new value of Z. Now the
Hold on. Zn squared. Am I an idiot? I don't know much about math, but I don't know. Shouldn't that be Zn squared because of that N right there? I don't know. Zn squared plus 1 equals Z. Okay. Let's just assume this guy is right for the sake of our argument.
first value of Z is 0 by definition. So that's the first value. So we plug that in, and we have 0 squared, which is 0, plus 1 is 1. Yeah, 0 squared plus 1 is 1, right? Even the Common Core folks got that one, right? Okay.
Does 0 doesn't even exist, does it? I mean, I know we have to use it in math and stuff, but does it actually exist? I don't know. I don't think it does. I mean, as a thing.
So that's the next value of Z, okay? And what we'll do is we'll put that 1 back into the formula. That's the new value of Z. So now we have 1 squared, which is 1, plus 1 is 2, okay? And you plug that back in, so we have 2 squared is 4. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Okay, you're getting this. You put it back in, 5 squared, 25, plus 1 is 26. Okay, we put that back in. 26 squared is a big number. And you put that back in. Okay, now you see what's happening here? Is the sequence of Z staying small? No. So is the number 1 part of the Mandelbrot set? No. Because it has to stay small for it to belong. You see? So we'll do one more example just to make it clear.
How does it not stay small in that case? And then, what is it getting at? I don't get it. I want to skip ahead to see what the hell he's talking about. Alright, let's skip around, see if we can figure out what he's talking about.
Is the number -1 part of the Mandelbrot set? So this time C equals -1, and we'll plug that in, so it's going to be Z squared minus Z. Z always starts as 0, so we have 0 squared, which is 0, minus 1 is -1. We put that back in. -1 squared is +1, right? Because a negative times a negative is a positive. Minus 1 is 0. We put that back in. 0 squared. Well, this looks familiar. 0 squared minus 1 is -1. Put that back. Oh, wait a minute. See what's happening there? 0, -1, 0, -1, 0, -1. Interesting. And you can see it'll do that forever. Is Z staying small? Yeah. So is the number -1 part of the Mandelbrot set?
Sorry.
It's not negative, and it's not 0. And that leaves us kind of scratching our heads a little bit. We have trouble with that. Well, I got news for you. Not everything in this universe is intuitive. If you've ever had a class in quantum mechanics, you know, the universe doesn't work always the way that we expect it to. You know, our intuition really is based on experience. And the fact is most adults don't have experience with imaginary numbers, and so they seem strange.
Yeah, it seems scientific, but yeah, he's trying to fold it into his religious ideology. I see that. I'm just trying to know if it's possible to understand what he's talking about. I'm trying, at least.
But it's just a matter of experience. When you were a little kid, negative numbers probably didn't make a lot of sense, right? You know, I can have one apple, it is. But it's not obvious, right? Because you can't tell just by looking at a number whether it's going to belong or not. You have to run it through that formula, and that's kind of tedious. But in the 1980s, in it as well. The shapes do belong. The points that are colored red do not. And I even shaded it, so points that are almost on the Mandelbrot set but not quite are bright yellow. And so it's kind of shaded. So if the sequence of Z goes to infinity really quick, it's dark red that grow off of it, and a spike over on the left, kind of that. Remarkable enough that they have branches at all, and strange and remarkable. Well, let's go back out over take a look at the overall shape here. So again, you have that cardioid, that's the heart-shaped structure, circles growing off of it, and then on the left side over there, you got this kind of spike that goes out. And you see there's this little bump on the end of the spike. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. So we'll zoom in on it. And that little bump, turns out, it looks like the entire Mandelbrot set. It's a mini Mandelbrot set. And it's almost identical to the parent, except it's got extra spikes growing off of it. But the basic shape's the same. It's got the cardioid and the circles. And, oh, it has a little spike growing off of it, too, with a little bump. What could that be? Well, let's zoom in on that. And, oh, interesting. Absolutely fat. And it's got extra spikes growing off of it. And that's got a little bud. How about that? Now, of course, you could do that literally forever.
It's called fractal. What does it mean?
And there's an infinite number of baby versions built into the Mandelbrot set on smaller and smaller scales. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And take a look at how small this is compared to the original when we zoom back out here. Look at how tiny it is. Isn't that remarkable? And the fact that it repeats infinitely.
You can keep zooming out too. I think that's not that's what he's not showing. That it's fractal and you can keep zooming out as well as you can keep zooming in.
And it doesn't lose complexity, it actually gains it each time you get more extra spikes growing off of it. Very remarkable. Well, to anticipate my conclusion in this, I'm going to suggest to you that this shape tells us something about the way God thinks.
Is that something he just made up? Or is that a thing? Can you, I'm sorry, it's hard to look, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to look this up. I really wouldn't. Is that shape a thing? Or is it just something he made up?
God's understanding is infinite. Numbers are an aspect of God's mind. God is responsible for numbers. And so it makes sense in the Christian worldview that when we explore and study numbers, we find intelligence in them. We find evidence of patterns. And not only intelligence, but infinite intelligence, because this thing repeats infinitely. A structure that repeats itself on smaller and smaller scales is called a fractal. So the Mandelbrot set is one example of a fractal. There are other types of fractals. There are other sections of the Mandelbrot set that are fractal. We could zoom in, for example, on one of these little tendril features here.
Oh my God, okay. He's trying to bring up something like the Fibonacci spiral. Am I saying that right? He's trying to bring up something like that without actually saying it.
And zoom in on that, and you'd say, well, that's interesting. You think what's going to stop at some point, right? Eventually it'll even out, and but it just keeps going. It's infinitely wiggly, you see. It's wiggling around like that, and you zoom in on it, and it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. It's just mesmerizing and watch this thing and see the scale here. And it gives you a little taste of what God's mind is like, to be able to think infinitely. We can only process just a little bit of information at a time, but God's mind is truly infinite. So one of the interesting areas to explore, and what I want to do now is just kind of spend some time exploring this shape that exists in the mind of God and has existed in the mind of God from creation, that was only discovered in the 1980s. And we can zoom in, for example, on this cusp between the main cardioid and the disc. And we find they call it the Valley of the Seahorses, because you see over on the right side, it looks like seahorses. They're upside down, because the way we've zoomed in on them here. Now, the colors are arbitrary. I can make them whatever I want, and we'll change them every now and then just to keep things interesting. But just keep in mind, black always represents numbers that do belong to the Mandelbrot set, and then colors represent those that do not belong to the Mandelbrot set. And bright colors are very close to being on the Mandelbrot set, but not quite a part of it. So let's zoom in on one of these seahorse structures over here. You see it looks like an upside-down seahorse. Isn't that fascinating? And quite beautiful. And I need to explain a little bit about what this means, because if the points are very bright, that means it's very close to the Mandelbrot set. And you might look and say, but yeah, that bright hub doesn't look like it's anywhere close.
Oh my God. This is pareidolia. This is severe pareidolia. It's, in my opinion, that's what this is. The human brain has an incredible knack for seeing patterns, and we want to try to explain patterns, but it's pareidolia. It's just because it looks like something doesn't mean that it is. It's
close to it. It is. It's just you need to realize that there is a very thin black thread that's.
Okay, let's skip around more and see what else we find.
That's wiggling around and making that shape. You see, it's just so thin. It's thinner than the pixels that the computer can plot. So everywhere you see structure like that, there is a very thin black thread that's winding around and creating that wonderful shape. So really quite remarkable. And who would have expected that little formula, z squared plus c, when you run numbers through it and you find out which ones belong, you get that. I think it's amazing. Well, let's zoom in and find out what this seahorse is made of. It's the central hub there looks kind of like a spider web type structure, right? You get the spiral galaxies, actually, which is an astronomer I really appreciate. God apparently likes spirals because he's built a lot of them into nature, and he's built them into math.
I knew it. I knew that's what he was going at. God damn it. How good am I?
Which is remarkable. Who would have guessed that there would be a spiral, a beautiful spiral, built into that little formula, z squared plus c, or rather built into numbers when we run them through that formula. Pretty amazing. It's a double spiral because there's actually two strands that wrap around each other. If you trace one strand, you'll find that there's a strand in between. And so it is a double spiral, as are spiral galaxies, by the way. And let's zoom in on that a little bit. And again, I've found you can zoom in on the center forever, so we'll zoom in on the side. And you find the spider web type structures, you find more double spirals, and you find a new structure. I call them bow ties. They're kind of in the middle. You see it looks like kind of like a little bow tie, right? And it's got two double spirals that intersect in the middle.
Wow.
Quite beautiful. Again, what you're seeing here, the Mandelbrot set, it's just incredibly wiggly. It's so wiggly. It's making these wonderful shapes, and that's what
I can see how religious people can be taken in by this. I can understand it. It's wow. It's it's interesting. I mean, but it's pareidolia. That's all it is. The ability for the human mind to see patterns. That's all it is. It's not a code.
The points that are very bright are very close to that thin black thread that's wiggling around and making all these wonderful shapes. So we'll zoom in on one of these bow ties. Beautiful. Who would have thought? The Christians would have thought. So the other valley we can zoom in on this.
He said it himself. Who would have thought? The Christians would have thought. Did you hear that? No, that was interesting. Was that a slip of the tongue?
It's kind of interesting. They call it the Valley of the Elephants.
Oh,
and that's the main cusp on the main. Okay. Beautiful. There we go. So we'll zoom in on these strands. And again, you find the spiderweb type structures. You find single spirals now, because so the computer gets slower and slower, and at some point you say, I give up. So, and you can see it's a perfect nephroid. Really amazing. And then instead of circles growing off of it, you have cardioids growing off of it. Notice everything's gone up by one. The Mandelbrot set had a cardioid which has one valley. This one has a nephroid which has two. And the circles growing on it which have no... The colors, I think they're pretty. Other people pick other colors, sometimes not always pleasant ones, and shame on them, because, you know, I do have an artistic side. The computer that created the beauty, the computer just revealed it quickly. It did something that would take us a long time to do. It did it fast. But you could do this thing manually. Did people make this? Did Benoit Mandelbrot create the Mandelbrot set? He defined that formula, but did he create the beauty and the complexity? Well, of course not. He was surprised, as was everyone else.
By discovering it, it was not created. As we dug deeper into math, people would discover these things, and these things would be named after the people that discovered them.
And some people didn't believe it when this was first discovered. They thought maybe it was some kind of artifact, some problem in terms of the way the computer is coding. But it's not. That's now been disproved. These things are real. The computer just allows us to view them quickly. People didn't make it. People were surprised by this result. And obviously you wouldn't be surprised by something you yourself made, right? You create some kind of design, you say, well, how about that? I had no idea it would be like that.
Yeah, people do all the time. It's... my God. Wow. Okay. I can see how people could be indoctrinated by this kind of stuff. I mean... this does not convince me at all. But I can see how it can convince other people. I mean, even atheists who are looking into religion for the first time, and that are science inclined. I can see how people can be taken in by this stuff, and it's so beautiful it could be. It had to have a creator. I get it. That's what he's saying. But no, it doesn't have to have a creator.
No, this was, and frankly, we can't make things that are infinitely complex anyway, right? Because we don't have the time, for one. I would say the beauty is built into math. It is. It's always been there. It wasn't until the 1980s that we had the ability to view it. What causes the complexity in fractals? These intricate shapes that can add and they can count and so on. What causes all that complexity? And the fact that it's infinitely complex. You have an infinite number of baby versions built in to the original. What's caused?
Why does it have to be caused? That's my question.
Causing that? Was it the computer? Well, again, the computer is simply revealing the complexity.
I've gone through this, and I've tolerated about as much as I could tolerate. Yeah, I can see how people could be taken in by this. But I'm not buying it. There's quite a bit to go here, but I'm just no. I'm not in the mood. So, get that off my screen. Goodbye. Okay, the moral of this story is that, yeah, no, it's the answer to it is pareidolia. We find patterns in things, and we want to assign purpose to these things, but it's just not there. It's sorry. I'll see you next time. Gonna end this video. I'll see you next time.